Next, we're going to hop over here to the materials sector and take a look at the equal weight material chart. Starting with the RSI chart, you can see our relative strength rankings up here at the top are all up towards the top in the 90s, 3 month, 6 month, 12 month. Very strong indeed, and you're seeing that this is just now trying to break out of a sideways, almost like a base on base type opportunity. RSI in a bull range, which is not very frequent right now. So this is a strong sector, as we've said many times, led by precious metals, industrial metals right now, but we can see the potential to pull some of the other areas up, especially if some of these material ETFs start getting some flow because of the metals and all of those. It's going to have some natural offshoot into the chemicals and the basic materials. Breadth is in the middle, but still well above the overall universe. Still showing strength on the relative comparative, very much versus the universe and everything else. And we're also seeing new highs definitely outpacing new lows, but you got some new lows jumping in here. Most of that's in the construction materials and things like that. Now, from a ranking, precious metals and industrial metals, those have been kind of swapping. Industrial metals were the king for a while, but precious really started moving this week. And then over the last couple of weeks, actually, and then chemicals and then basic materials are down there with some construction materials, things like that, having a tougher time. From an ETF standpoint, which we're going to take a look at a few, we're going to see that, there are some that have moved, there are some that are still opportunities. Short term, you might see some sideways to pull back, but longer term, these look set up to really have some strength. Now, XME is what everybody has seen. This run has been just tremendous, and I don't think you could chase it in good conscience right here and try to put a new position on. But this thing pulls back, it'll set up again. I have a feeling this, if we are going to see some longer term inflation, this will hold up and continue to perform over time. But this one is just not the one you want to try to jump and chase at this point. Now, GDX also having a strong run here. Looks like the chart is a lot more set up to continue to move. RSI is not quite as hot. It's had some more intermittent moves in here until the end of the week, and it broke out and jumped out into closing this gap over here, which was a big resistance potential. As at the same time, it broke this weekly trend line, moving higher and moved into a new RSI bull range here on the weekly. The daily came back and back tested the 60 and moved up and is currently on the nitrous. I mean, that is a really solid look. Again, finding entry and position sizing right now is something that you're going to have to work with to try to be comfortable with where you're at and your longevity or how long you want to stay with the trade. The next is copper. Copper finally broke out this week after kind of being a laggard. On the short term, RSI is a bit hot and could flag or come back some, but on the longer term, you can see this nice rolling RSI with the base itself, and if it breaks out here, it could continue to move pretty strong. PIC is another one in there. That is the Select Metals and Mining Group. It's run but not as hard as the XME, and it's got some of the other, something like it says, some of the metals and mining and some of the background company type stuff. It's just moving into new RSI bull range. The weekly is and the daily is already up there and running on the nitrous here. Again, just breaking above this little level Friday. It has these all-time highs to test. The question is, can it get over there short term, or does it have to consolidate some? And then we look at the sector as a whole. Here I chose IWM for tonight, but there are plenty others that are similar that you can look at. Just now moving into a new RSI bull range. That's what I meant. These metals have already been moving, but maybe some of these other parts of the sector are starting to get pulled higher with flows and things of that sort. This bull range shift here, noting the weekly never lost the RSI bull range or the trend line during all of this mess we've just recently been in. And this one looks like it's one that if it gets above this volume area and bar here, it's got some pretty good open space above it. So you don't have to go to the individual areas. You can even go to a broad one and still see a pretty strong opportunity in the ETF land. Now, when we move over to industrial metals, I'm going to pause this. I wanted to move it back to the top of that. Y'all having to see all the scrolling, but when we move it over here, you can see this one's already run. The equal weight RSI is up at 80. Again, it's kind of hard to take a lot of the positions in here, and a lot of these areas have already run really strong, extremely strong breadth across the board here. So it's one of those areas to where a lot of people would say we're too far, we're done, it's gone too far. Now, I completely agree that it can consolidate and pull back some, but as we're going to see just in just a minute, when you have strong areas like this and the big names that move fast, they're up 20, 30, 40, 50, 100%, that's great. But when you start digging down into these areas, you can find some charts that look really good. Worthington Industries right here. We have earnings coming up in a couple weeks. But until then, it's breaking out of an inverse head and shoulders pattern in a new RSI bull range on the daily, and the weekly looking heading up there for a bull range test. If we get this breakout and we can catapult above this trend line before earnings, you could get a really strong move. Maybe you could take it off before the numbers. The next one in industrial metals that I looked at was CRS. It's one that looks like it already had a big surge and now it's flagging that out. It can go either way, so watch each rail. But if it breaks this upper rail, it gets over this value area, then we could really start shifting into testing these highs here as this market continues to favor this area. Next, we have FCX. You know, this is one that's already broken out of this cup and handle. The question is, can it back test this 46 area? It may never look back because its options flow is huge right now, but let's say it does. It moves back to 46 and you might have a good opportunity. So set an alert and come back and take a look. Another one is Cliff. It's made a huge run, so we might want to see it move sideways a little bit. But again, in the market we are in, if it breaks this highs, a quick, nimble trader could put pieces in, take pieces out, and still make some opportunities here, even if we see some decent volatility. That just needs to be your style to try it here. If not, let it flag out some. Hope it flags out before the breakout, and then you can get you hopefully a little bit early entry before it hits that high again with little better looking RSI. When we go next to SID, this is one that's an old favorite, but it got killed back recently. We have earnings coming up, so we want to wait until we see that. But look how this sets up. Maybe it gaps up and we can't do anything, but this one starts to set up as it moves out of value area. There's very little volume up here to this probably 8 area, and we're only at 568. So if it doesn't take all this up in earnings, if we have a relatively positive outlook, you might be able to find an opportunity in here again. But I just wanted to show that as a name that, you know, is not one of the top runners, but looks like it has some opportunity. It came right and checked back to this big volume area, overshot it, but on this last couple weeks in this Morningstar type look, I said look, not pattern, because the pattern needs to come after a downtrend, and we can't say that right here. If we break on up higher, this thing could continue to move as well. Now, moving into precious metals, you know, same thing. I'm going to pause and go to the high part of the page and look at our actual equal weight precious metal sector. It's just now breaking out, and when I back out, it's an internal breakout. We haven't got to the new highs on this one, but the RSI is in a strong bull range and moving up in the 70s. The breadth is running right now. You're in the 90s and the 80s from an NA breadth standpoint, and it's easy to see right here that you got a nice trend line that is trying to break here on the advanced decline line in precious metals. So there's a lot of good looking things in the breadth, showing a lot of things are participating. The relative comparative is moving almost straight up, and lots of new highs, 10-day, 21, and 63-day. Now we move down to the precious metal stocks. You can sort them, rank them, look at them however you want, flip to trading view charts. If you are a member, it'll take you straight to your templates. I am, so here's one of my templates here that I look at, and I've marked a couple of these up. Don't want that. But as you can see here, AEM's one of the gold charts that hasn't already gone, and earnings are past. They weren't great, but it's continuing to move higher regardless of that. That is a great sign that there's some demand there. If we can get a breakout here early week, this one can easily go into the mid-60s in shorter order. And even though the sector itself has already moved a lot, this is one that looks like it's still got some juice potential in it. The next one is PAS, silver miners. Just broke into an RSI bull range. The weekly's still in a bear range, but RSI is leading price right now. If we can break this downtrend line, you got plenty of room. You go up right now to about 28.40. From there, it can really move on up into these other areas. Got a couple gaps in here to watch, but that's really some distance from where we are at the moment. Again, in a very hot space. Next one, FNV. This one had a really nice big weekly pattern right at the top of it. Daily has ran a little bit strong, so you want to be kind of careful. But again, the weekly is just in a fresh bull range. The daily came back and back chested it and it's heading back up. And even though RSI is at 74, man, the moves you can see in RSI going from 74 to 85 or 74 to 90 are monstrous. So again, the higher the RSI get, the more dollar move you get per RSI point. So the higher it gets to the edges, the faster the moves are. They just also are fast in both directions. Sorry, I went backwards on that one. The next one is AGI. This is a little different look. It's a little earlier. Daily RSI is just moving into a bull range, and it's just hopping over this little low base / consolidation. Again, a $3 billion name, lesser known, but another gold name that we might be able to take a look at. But jumping even into the laggard sector, chemicals, I'm just going to stay down here at the bottom. The top charts don't look that great yet, but I'm just showing that you can get outside of your fertilizers, which have killed it. There's definitely a lot of stuff that looks good in here. We talked about Hawkins weeks ago, some of these others. But tonight, I just pulled out a few charts for us to look at that are worth taking a glance. Westlake, WLK, looks like its daily just broke out of a really large ascending triangle, had a failure during the tough markets, and is now consolidated and moving back higher. On the weekly, it just looks like a beautiful move into an RSI bull range. The daily's right at 60, so there's plenty of room to move in these indicators if it wants to. And as you can see where I put my thing over here on the weekly chart, my pointer, it's just breaking out, and the weekly volume has been strong as well. Another one, MEOH. This is another name that, as you can see, is just now in an RSI bull range right around the 60 level, has been consolidating here up under the highs on the daily. A breakout over here is going to pop it over this weekly volume levels right up here, and there's just not much else until we get up towards these other highs. Okay, so as we get up through here, we can go up, I'm sorry, not highs, this next piece in the mid 60s, but again, that's 10+% from where we sit right now. The final is basic materials. Again, there's a few in here you can look at. Sorry, I keep saying again, but it's like each one, even though they look like these weren't the strongest sector of materials, there are some great charts in here. This is a $15 billion company, a Brazilian company, so something outside of the energy in the Brazil play, bouncing off 40 twice with a strong day on Friday and looking like its RSI wants to head up into a new bull range on the weekly. So, a break over this area right here, getting maybe over this value area at 1198. Right now we're at 1123. You could take an internal breakout about 1140 and work against these recent lows. And then our next one in the materials is PKG. Packaging Corporation. It's one as well that looks like it's consolidated this flag pretty well below the highs on the daily. It held its RSI bull range during all this after the gap up on the last earnings, tested that gap, and is now back towards the upper rail. A break here gets you over a lot of the volume, puts you up to test these highs. A break of those highs breaks all-time highs. So it puts you in blue sky area, in, again, a strong sector that looks like it might be kind of fanning out a little bit. So that's our materials. We're going to move on to the next sector in just a minute, so let me end this one.